What if the life you're living right now is being shaped by something you can't see, but use every single day? Your mindset. Two people can face the same failure, the same rejection, the same financial setback, the same difficult situation. And yet, one gives up while the other looks for a way forward. Why? What makes one person see a dead end while another sees an opportunity? What makes one person fear failure while another uses that same failure as a lesson? The difference is not always talent. It isn't always money. And it isn't always luck. Very often, it begins with the way we think. Because the way you think influences the decisions you make. Those decisions shape your habits. Your habits shape your actions. And over time, your actions shape the direction of your life. Most people rarely stop to question the beliefs behind those decisions. They inherit beliefs from their past. They accept limitations as facts. They allow fear to define what is possible. And then, without realizing it, they repeat the same patterns and wonder why they keep getting the same results. But what happens when you change the way you see yourself? What happens when failure stops being proof that you are not good enough, and starts becoming information? What happens when rejection becomes direction? When setbacks become lessons? When a limitation becomes a challenge instead of an excuse? That is where a powerful mindset begins. This audiobook is about learning to think differently. Not by pretending that every problem is easy. Not by ignoring reality. And not by convincing yourself that success is guaranteed. Instead, it is about learning how to respond to reality with greater awareness, greater resilience, and a stronger sense of possibility. Whether your goals involve your career, your finances, your relationships, your confidence, or your personal growth, the way you think can influence the way you approach all of them. So ask yourself one question before we go any further. What if the biggest thing standing between you and the life you want is the way you've been taught to think? Let's explore that question. Have you ever noticed that two people can experience the same event and walk away with completely different conclusions? One sees failure. The other sees feedback. One sees rejection. The other sees redirection. One sees a difficult situation and thinks, "Why is this happening to me?" The other asks, "What can I learn from this?" The event may be the same. The interpretation is not. And that interpretation matters. Your mindset is the lens through which you interpret your experiences. It influences what you notice. It influences what you ignore. It affects the meaning you give to success, failure, criticism, uncertainty, and change. That is why changing your mindset is not simply about thinking positive thoughts. It is about changing the questions you ask yourself. Instead of, "Why can't I do this?" you begin asking, "What would I need to learn to do this better?" Instead of, "I failed," you ask, "What did this experience teach me?" Instead of, "This is impossible," you ask, "What part of this can I control?" Those questions may seem small. But small questions can create very different actions. And different actions, repeated consistently, can create very different outcomes. To understand how powerful perspective can be, consider one of the most well-known examples from the world of business and creativity. Steve Jobs experienced a moment that could easily have been interpreted as the end of his career. In 1985, he was forced out of Apple, the company he had helped build. Imagine what that might have felt like. You devote years of your life to something. You help create something meaningful. And then suddenly, you are no longer part of it. For many people, an experience like that could become a permanent source of bitterness. But Jobs later described that period as a turning point that opened the door to one of the most creative periods of his life. That perspective mattered. Instead of allowing rejection to become his identity, he used the experience as a new beginning. He went on to work on Next and became deeply involved with Pixar. Years later, he returned to Apple. The lesson is not that every setback automatically leads to success. It doesn't. The lesson is that a setback does not have to define the rest of your story. Sometimes, the event you experience as a loss becomes the event that forces you to reconsider your direction. Sometimes, what closes one door reveals another. And sometimes, you don't recognize the value of a difficult chapter until much later. Your mindset cannot control everything that happens to you. But it can influence what you do next. And that matters. If you're interested in psychology, personal growth, habits, and the ideas that can help you think more intentionally about your life, consider subscribing to the channel. And if you're finding value in this audiobook, a like helps support the channel and lets us know you'd like to see more content like this. Now, let's continue. One of the most useful ways to understand mindset is to look at the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. A fixed mindset assumes that abilities are largely permanent. A person with this way of thinking may believe, "I'm just not good at this. I've never been confident. I've always been bad with money. I could never become good at public speaking. I've never been the athletic type." The statement sounds harmless. But there is a hidden assumption inside it. The assumption that because something is difficult now, it will always be difficult. A growth mindset starts from a different place. It says, "I may not be good at this yet. I can improve. I can learn. I can practice. I can get better." That one word, yet, creates room for possibility. Think about someone who struggles with public speaking. A fixed mindset says, "I'm terrible at this." A growth mindset says, "I'm uncomfortable with this right now, but I can improve with practice." The second person is not guaranteed success. But they are far more likely to take the actions required to improve. That is the important difference. A growth mindset does not mean believing you can do absolutely anything without limits. It means recognizing that many of your abilities are not fixed, and that improvement often comes through learning, practice, feedback, and persistence. So how do you begin building a growth-oriented mindset? Start with self-reflection. The next time you experience a failure, notice your first reaction. Do you immediately think, "I knew I couldn't do it"? Or do you ask, "What went wrong? What can I learn? What can I change? What should I try differently next time?" That is the first shift. Do not rush to judge yourself. Study the experience. Failure becomes useful when you can learn from it. The second shift is to set learning-oriented goals. Instead of focusing only on outcomes, focus on the skill you are building. Instead of, "I need to become the best," try, "I need to improve this specific skill." Instead of, "I have to succeed immediately," try, "I need to get better with every attempt." This reduces the pressure to prove yourself and increases your focus on development. The third shift is learning how to receive feedback. Feedback can hurt, especially when it challenges the way you see yourself. But feedback can also reveal something you could not see on your own. The goal is not to accept every opinion as truth. The goal is to become curious enough to ask, "Is there something useful here?" The fourth shift is learning to change your self-talk. Notice how quickly your mind creates conclusions. "I can't. I always fail. I'm not smart enough. I'm too far behind. Now replace those conclusions with questions. What can I improve? What is one step I can take? What would I do differently next time? Your inner dialogue does not have to become unrealistic. It simply needs to become more constructive. Consider two students preparing for the same competition. Both work hard. Both enter. And both lose. The first student goes home thinking, I'm not talented enough. There's no point in trying again. The second student thinks, I didn't win this time. What can I improve before the next one? The outcome is the same. The response is different. The first student uses failure as a verdict. The second uses it as information. Now imagine that difference repeated for years. One person stops trying whenever the result is disappointing. The other keeps learning. Keeps adjusting. Keeps practicing. Over time, that difference becomes enormous. This is why mindset matters. Not because your thoughts magically change reality, but because your thoughts influence what you do when reality becomes difficult. A useful mindset does not pretend that problems are good. A serious setback can be painful. A rejection can hurt. Losing money can be frightening. Failure can be humiliating. There is no need to deny those feelings. The goal is to add another question. What can I do with this now? That question moves you from helplessness toward action. Imagine you receive criticism at work. Your first reaction may be, they don't respect me. A more productive response could be, what part of this criticism is useful? You lose an opportunity. Instead of, I'll never get another chance. Ask, what did this teach me about how I need to prepare? You make a mistake. Ask, what caused the mistake, and what system can prevent it next time? This is not weakness. It is strategic thinking. Your mindset is not shaped only by what happens inside your head. It is also influenced by what surrounds you. The people you spend time with. The information you consume. The conversations you repeatedly hear. The content you watch. The standards you accept. The habits you practice. If your environment constantly reinforces fear, cynicism, comparison, and negativity, it becomes harder to maintain clarity. That does not mean you should avoid every negative person or create an artificial world where everything is positive. It means you should become more intentional about what you allow to influence you. Ask yourself, what am I consuming every day? Who am I learning from? What ideas am I repeatedly exposing myself to? What kind of behavior am I normalizing? Your environment does not control your destiny, but it can influence your default patterns. Choose it carefully. There is another mistake people make when learning about personal growth. They consume information endlessly. They watch videos. They read books. They listen to podcasts. They collect advice. But nothing changes. Why? Because understanding an idea is not the same as practicing it. You can understand discipline and still procrastinate. You can understand confidence and still avoid difficult conversations. You can understand positive thinking and still allow fear to control your decisions. Knowledge becomes useful when it changes behavior. So choose one idea from this audiobook and practice it. Not 10. 1. If you struggle with negative self-talk, work on your internal dialogue. If you avoid challenges, intentionally take on one difficult task. If you constantly focus on failure, begin writing down what each setback teaches you. The goal is not to become a completely different person overnight. The goal is to create better responses, one decision at a time. Take a moment and think honestly. What is one belief about yourself that you know needs to change? Maybe it is the belief that you're not capable enough. Maybe it is the fear of failure. Maybe you've convinced yourself that it's too late. Maybe you've spent years telling yourself that you are simply not that kind of person. Whatever it is, write it in the comments. And if you're ready to stop letting that belief define your future, write, "This is my time." Then keep listening. A mindset shift is not a single decision. It is a practice. You build it through repetition. Here are 5 simple principles to remember. 1. Treat failure as feedback. Ask, "What did this teach me?" 2. Replace fixed statements with learning statements. Instead of, "I can't," say, "I can't do this yet." 3. Set goals around growth. Don't focus only on the final result. Focus on what you need to become capable of doing. 4. Learn from criticism. Protect your self-respect, but stay open to useful information. 5. Value small improvements may feel insignificant in the moment. Over time, they compound. A person who improves slightly every day can become dramatically better over months and years. That is why consistency matters so much. Changing your mindset does not mean becoming positive every second of every day. Real life does not work that way. You will still have bad days. You will still feel afraid. You will still experience disappointment. You will still question yourself. The goal is not to eliminate those emotions. The goal is to stop allowing them to make every decision for you. A stronger mindset says, "I am afraid, but I can still move. I am disappointed, but I can still learn. I don't know the answer yet, but I can search for it. I failed this time, but I can try again." That is resilience. And resilience is one of the foundations of long-term growth. Another useful technique is visualization. Visualization means creating a clear mental picture of a goal, the process of reaching it, and the person you need to become along the way. Imagine your future clearly. What are you working toward? What does that life look like? What skills does that version of you have? How do you behave? How do you respond when something goes wrong? The purpose of visualization is not to sit still and wait for the future to arrive. It is to create clarity. A clear vision can help you focus your attention and make your daily actions more intentional. One story often associated with this idea involves actor Jim Carrey. Before his career reached the level many people know today, he reportedly wrote himself a check for a large amount of money and kept that image of success in front of him. Later, he achieved a major financial milestone through his acting career. Whether you see that story as inspiration, coincidence, visualization, or a combination of factors, the deeper lesson is useful. A clear picture of what you want can influence what you pay attention to and what actions you take. But visualization without action is incomplete. Seeing the destination is not the same as walking toward it. So when you visualize a goal, also visualize the work. Visualize yourself practicing, learning, making difficult decisions, recovering from setbacks, showing up when motivation disappears. That is where visualization becomes practical. Tonight, before you sleep, take 5 quiet minutes. Close your eyes. Choose one meaningful goal. Picture it clearly. But do not stop at the final result. Imagine the process. If your goal is financial growth, imagine yourself learning, planning, saving, building skills, and making better decisions. If your goal is career growth, imagine yourself improving your abilities, speaking with confidence, preparing carefully, and taking opportunities that challenge you. If your goal is personal growth, Imagine yourself responding differently to the situations that normally trigger you. Then ask, what would the person capable of achieving this goal do today? Write down one action. And take that action. Because vision gives direction. But action creates momentum. If there is one quality every strong mindset needs, it is resilience. You will fail. At some point, you will be rejected. You will make decisions that turn out to be wrong. You will experience setbacks that feel unfair. You will work hard and still lose. That is part of life. The question is not whether difficulty will come. The question is what you will do when it does. Thomas Edison is often remembered for the persistence he showed while working through thousands of unsuccessful experiments in his search for a practical electric light. Whatever the exact number of attempts, the lesson remains simple. Progress often requires repeated experimentation. You do not always know which attempt will work. You learn by trying. You adjust. You try again. Michael Jordan provides another familiar example of persistence. His career included missed shots, lost games, criticism, and setbacks. What made his story powerful was not the absence of failure. It was his willingness to continue despite it. That is what resilience looks like. Not never falling. Getting back up. Not never doubting yourself. Continuing despite the doubt. Not avoiding difficulty. Learning how to move through it. Start by accepting failure as part of the process. When something goes wrong, resist the urge to turn one event into a permanent identity. Instead of, I failed, therefore I'm a failure. Say, I failed at this, and now I have information I didn't have before. Second, practice constructive self-talk. When life becomes difficult, speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you genuinely want to help. Not with empty praise. With perspective. This is difficult. I can handle the next step. I don't have to solve everything today. I can learn from this. Third, break large goals into smaller steps. Big goals can become overwhelming when you look at the entire distance at once. Focus on the next mile. The next task. The next conversation. The next hour. Momentum often begins with something small. Fourth, protect your environment. Spend more time around people and ideas that encourage growth, discipline, curiosity, and responsibility. Finally, be patient. Real change often happens slowly. You may not notice it from one day to the next. But small improvements accumulate. A better decision today can lead to another better decision tomorrow. And eventually, those decisions become a different life. At some point, mindset stops being an idea and becomes a way of living. You start noticing how quickly you react. You become more aware of the beliefs behind your choices. You catch yourself before falling into old patterns. You stop asking only, what happened to me? And begin asking, what am I going to do next? That question changes everything. Because you may not be able to control every event in your life. You cannot control other people's decisions. You cannot control every setback. You cannot control the past. But you can influence your response. And your response is where your power begins. Think about the person you want to become. Not the person you want other people to admire. The person you want to become when nobody is watching. How does that person think? How do they respond to failure? How do they handle criticism? How do they use their time? What do they focus on? What do they refuse to keep believing? Now ask yourself, what is one thing that version of you would do differently today? Not someday. Today. Maybe it is making the call you've been avoiding. Maybe it is beginning the project you've been postponing. Maybe it is spending less time scrolling and more time learning. Maybe it is forgiving yourself for an old mistake. Maybe it is finally accepting that you are capable of growth. Your future is not created in one dramatic moment. It is built through ordinary decisions repeated over time. One thought. One action. One habit. One response. One day at a time. If this audiobook gave you a new perspective on the way you think, take a moment before you leave and ask yourself one final question. What would change in your life if you stopped thinking like the person you were, and started thinking like the person you want to become? Your mindset shapes the way you respond to failure. It shapes the risks you take, the habits you build, the opportunities you notice, and ultimately, the direction of your life. You may not be able to control everything that happens to you, but you can learn to control how you respond. And that is where real change begins. If you found value in this audiobook, consider subscribing to the channel for more books, ideas, and lessons on mindset, psychology, habits, personal growth, and success. And before you go, share one thing in the comments. What is one mindset you are leaving behind, and what is one mindset you are choosing to build from today? Write it down. Because sometimes, a decision becomes more powerful the moment you put it into words. And remember, change your thinking, and you change the direction of your life. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep becoming the person you want to be.